Chris is with us now from Jerusalem. Chris, can you tell us more about Raisi's background, like being a member of those death committees in the 1980s?
Yeah, I can, Pat. There were four members on that particular committee. And what they did, there were two fatwas that were issued by then Ayatollah Khomeini. And there were two questions. First of all, one was political. The other was religious. And some people have described it sort of like a medieval committee. And really, people, if they answered one way or another, were sentenced to death. Some of the trials, Pat, lasted for just a few minutes. Some were deemed apostates, and up to 5,000 may have been killed. So Raisi today, he says, when he was asked about these killings back in the 1980s, he said he was a defender of human rights. But some have said this was the greatest crime of the Islamic Revolution.
Chris, how can they put a man like that in charge of the country? Now, the people in Iran didn't vote. I mean, the voting turnout was very small, and those mullahs have control of everything, so he's a hand-picked man. Well, what's it going to mean in terms of Israel? Is Iran going forward with this nuclear program, and what's Israel going to do to respond?
Well, I think two explanations for why this man was elected. Actually, people are calling it a selection, not an election, because of what they did with the Guardian Council that really eliminated any potential competitors to Raisi. One is that it continues on its ambitions to get a nuclear weapon. The other may be that this was a possible successor to, right now, to Ali Khamenei. And what will Israel do, Pat? They won't let Iran get a nuclear weapon. I mean, you can say yesterday, Yair Lapid said they were determined not to let Iran get a nuclear weapon. Just a couple of weeks ago, the former head of the Israeli Mossad said he asked rhetorically, what does Iran need for us to explain to them? We won't let them get it. He's been responsible for many of the covert operations. And Pat, I think you need to go back to the Begin doctrine. Back in 1981, Begin had a doctrine, Menachem Begin had a doctrine that any of its neighbors would not get weapons of mass destruction. That's when he ordered the strike in 1981 against the Iraqi nuclear program. And then in 2007, then Prime Minister Ehud Olmert destroyed the Syrian nuclear reactor. The question right now, Pat, remains to be seen what's going to happen in 2021. What will this new Israeli government do about Iran's nuclear program?
Well, it looks like the Biden administration is moving ahead with talks on a nuclear deal. And does anybody in the Middle East believe the deal would stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons?
Exactly. And those are the dynamics that are going on right now, Pat. Here in Vienna, you have the United States negotiating with Iran. You have Iran electing this hardline conservative president. And you also have Israel watching these two dynamics. And Pat, there was a recent paper by 3 Israeli experts. And what they said is that right now the U.S. seems willing to allow only partial limits on Iran's enrichment. Remember, they're only one step away from weapons grade, and actually they're going to forego some of the supervision clauses. And what that's going to do is make Iran a nuclear threshold country, possibly months away from one bomb, then maybe more bombs. And their conclusion was this, that the deal being negotiated right now in Vienna won't limit Iran, but it will significantly limit Iran's ability to intervene.
Chris, you know, we've talked about the concept of the Mahdi, and we've also talked about their belief that when the Mahdi comes, there's going to be chaos, and then he will control the chaos and bring it all to an end. Now, the other prime minister believed that. Do you think this new man, Raisi, holds to those views?
I do, Pat. And in fact, I asked the Iranian expert that we had in our report about that, and he said, well, they're all 12ers. That means they believe in the appearance or the reappearance of the 12th Imam. It was Ahmadinejad. I think almost everyone remembers him. He was the one that really believed it so powerfully that he talked about it at the United Nations, and he talked about it often. But all of the clerics right now, the mullahs there, they believe in the 12th Imam. And so this this really existential theology, and you mix that with their nuclear technology, it's really a toxic brew that poses a threat not only to Israel, but the entire region, especially the Sunni Arab nations, the United States, and Europe as well.
So, Chris, their religion would lead them to launch a nuclear strike, and that would in turn bring on the 12th Imam. Am I saying it right?
Well, one of the theologies is exactly that, Pat, that they believe that before the reappearance of the 12th Imam is that there would be chaos in the world. Now, if they get a nuclear weapon, they can certainly foment that chaos to bring him back to the world, according to their theology. So that's why it's so important, imperative here in Israel. That's what they believe, that Iran not be able to get a weapon of mass destruction, not only one bomb, Pat, but an arsenal of nuclear weapons.
Chris, thank you so